we should talk about that because that'll make a good clip. So let me make a note. We'll dive into chatbot a little bit. But it'll be, I don't know. I know how I'll bring it up. All right. Anyway, let's kind of get rolling with this. I want to know just right off the bat, kind of fill our viewers in on what you're most excited about right now.
Okay, so I would say probably the launch of my business. I started my podcast in January of last year, so a year ago now. And I was like, okay, how can I make money from this? You know, that wasn't the main goal, but after a while I was investing so much time into it that I was like, if this can be like a little, you know, passive income or anything like that, I'm going to make it work. Fast forward a year, and tomorrow will actually be the launch of Lifestyle Redesigned Company. And so that is where the podcast will now be, you know, like distributed and things like that. There will also be like blogs and resources. We'll be offering different services like project management, personalized travel itineraries. I'll be like offering my personal services, so speaking engagements, brand collaborations, things like that. And then what's the last part of it? And then I will be doing one-on-one mentoring for like pretty much anybody my age, older than me, younger than me, of just like, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten so many questions of like, how do you do what you do? And for me, it's kind of like a simple answer. But when you see stuff online, you're like, oh my God, she probably spent like years trying to get to that point and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I just want to tell people and like just inspire them low key to be like, to just go and do something, you know, like you could change your life so instantly if you just go and take like a tiny little action towards like what you're actually going towards. So I would say that's what I'm most excited about. Tomorrow will be the launch of my company, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, we're shooting this on, I think it's the 19th. So yeah, Sunday would be, it's pretty good timing, I'd say.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty good press for the first week of the business. We'll dive into it. Want to hear more about it. Sounds super cool. You know, just the whole kind of like lifestyle redesigned. I've watched you kind of like build this over the last 12 months, and you were kind of, how did you take us through that process of going from, I guess, you know, a hobby, something you were interested in, to like what triggered it to you saying, oh, I could make a business out of this?
Yeah. So I've always been interested in, I don't want to say rebelling, but just like doing something that not everybody else did. I was never like a follower, I want to say. You know, I had people who I was inspired by, and I had people that motivated me, but I never looked at like the normal stuff and was like, oh, that's exactly what I want to do. I was always like, what's the opposite of that? That's what I'll do. You know what I mean? So that kind of started, honestly, during COVID, because we just had like so much time on our hands to actually be like looking into things and like reflecting and all of that stuff. I know you've probably heard it a million times, but so that's when I kind of just started being like, okay, I can actually do something that I enjoy, that also makes me money, that also makes an impact on the world. Like those were my three main, I would say, like pillars when I first started all of this, was like inspire, impact, and essentially have an income of some kind. I knew that wasn't going to be immediate, which is why I had to invest and all of that stuff. And it's definitely a decent financial commitment as well. But once you see that commitment actually pay off, it's like, okay, this is worth it, you know? Yeah. So when I did first start the podcast and just wanting to like inspire people, it was honestly just because I wanted another outlet of doing so, because I was already doing that on Instagram when I switched over to just creating travel content. And yeah, that's kind of like what sparked the podcast. Was I wanted another outlet to either send people or to have new people discover, you know, the travel industry or my Instagram page or whatever I was going to be creating in the future. I just wanted another platform to like use to do that.
Super cool. And yeah, while we're on the topic, let's talk about, you know, podcasting. It's gotten so much bigger, you know, over the last few years, especially I'm sure during COVID. Even myself, like during COVID, it's hard to even think back to that time. But yeah, I guess like where it really did pick up was like very similar. Like we had a lot to say and we had a lot of experience built up. Really, we kind of got to share this. what do people get wrong? Or sorry, what limiting factors did you have before starting the podcast, or what limiting factors do you think people traditionally have before they start a podcast, and how can you kind of like eliminate that?
Okay, that's a good question. So one thing that I want to say, like, I would always look up or always like be researching was like fast success, I should say, or just like increased success, or how can I get to this point as fast as possible? And when I was like 10, 11, 12, I had like a YouTube channel, and everybody was like, all right, just stick with it. And, like you'll make it at some point, just wait a couple years, blah, blah, blah. But that ended up just being like very inconsistent. I was also a little kid, so like it wasn't really going in the way that I wanted it to. And back then, going forward to now, I had the same belief that the market was too saturated. And I've heard this before. I've heard this a million times of like, oh, people think that they can't get into blank because too many people are already doing it. But when it came to podcasting, because I was debating between doing YouTube or podcasting, and just like Instagram, taking that more seriously, TikTok, all of that stuff. And it's like the amount of podcasts that are actually out there is like 1% of the amount of like users on TikTok, users on Instagram, YouTubers. So the fact that podcasting was getting so popular, but it was still like the least saturated market, I was like, you know what? This is where I want to be. This is where I want to grow. And like you were saying, so many people just started posting about podcasts and listening to them more. Everybody had so much downtime. It was like you couldn't leave your house, so you just put a podcast on. You know what I mean? Or you had to go for a walk because you weren't doing anything else, so you were listening to a podcast, and people would start posting about it and talking about it. And I was like, you know what? This is where I want to be. This is what I want people to be posting about. If they're posting about my content, it's about how inspiring what they heard was, how inspiring the guests that I have on were. So I think that for people who are really trying to start something new, if you look too deep into how many other people are doing it, you're going to get discouraged. Like even starting an Etsy or having an Etsy shop, for example, it's like people think that maybe making, I don't know, like planners or journals or something, the market's too saturated. But it's like if you stay consistent and work towards it, it's growing. Like we don't understand that like where it was before to where it is now, the extreme growth, and then where we are now to a couple years down the line, it's going crazy. And I think that like don't ever think that there's too many people where you want to be, because you could be that person that actually like gives somebody value or makes it, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. I put a tweet out about this probably like 3 weeks ago, because I've always kind of like felt that same thing and was fascinated with how many people just don't start because they think it's too saturated. And I don't know when I came to the realization, but whatever. I put the tweet out and I was like, if before you say a market's too saturated, you could look at it that way, or you could look at it as this many people are showing you that it's possible. So why can't you do it? Also,
for sure.
If anything, the numbers have just gone up and increased your odds that, look, that's how many people find this doable. So like take it as too saturated, or take it as you could learn from 100 million people that are exactly where you want to be and aren't sitting here saying it's too saturated. I'm not going to start. Nobody started at the same. Nobody got to start at zero. There's a very, very few minute people that got to be like, oh, I was the first podcaster. Nobody could even tell you who that is.
Right.
I get kind of like, I like that you brought that up, because it's something I've definitely like expanded on. And we have this whole system here of like just 1% is still better than zero. And you're a lot better than most of your peers when like you're just at least doing something. So like, yes, when you have the podcast is a great way to do that. What do you, I was curious while we were on the podcast topic, oh man, where was I going with that? I wanted to know kind of why do people watch podcasts? Why do you think a majority of people watch podcasts? What do you think is like the
okay? Well, going back onto what you said before, just really quick, I wanted to add something that actually, like, I'm doing a post on soon, is learning how to see opportunities in challenges as opposed to seeing the challenge in a challenge, or like the obstacle in a challenge. So just really quick, this was just
No,
like
of course, yeah.
little rampage that I was thinking about. But I have always been the person that's like, everything bad happens to me. You know what I mean? So whenever anything bad happens, it's like, when shit hits the fan, it hits the fan. Like, if your laptop breaks, your phone also cracks. You know, if your phone cracks, your window is, you know, messed up. You got to get that fixed. If this happens, this happens. And I feel like everybody thinks that, like, there's so many, like, bad things happening to them all at once, or they're the only ones going through it or whatnot. And those are just like minuscule problems. Of course, you know, there's obviously greater problems in the world and greater things that we deal with. But when you take those challenges, even for example, losing your job, it's like, okay, that is a serious obstacle, a serious challenge that a lot of people go through and a lot of people are dealing with. But when you look at the opportunity of that, maybe it's honing in on on your skill sets, and, you know, going more towards like the entrepreneur route, and just things like that, of like seeing the opportunities that you can get out of the things that happen to you, I think is very important. And I think it goes along with like the limiting beliefs of like, oh, there's way too many people here, there's way too many, like, there's too much competition or whatever. But it's like, if this many people are in the market, think about how many people are buying from them, or how many people are watching them, or how many people are listening to them. And it's like, those are the people that you have to think about. It's like, how many people are going to listen to you? You know what I mean? How many, like, lives are you going to change? How many people are you going to inspire? And I think that, like, looking at things as always like the glass half full and da 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 da, it's like, that's the most important part when it comes to switching your limiting belief, is like just looking for opportunities in everything, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So that was just really quick.
No,
I know
think
that was
a
kind of
great
topic.
addition. I switched it a little quick, and
Yeah.
no, that's super dope. And I think, like you said, you know, with the amount of people, like, think about it, they also have problems of their own now, and like with all the new with everything they're doing, like all these different people, more opportunities, like start figuring out where you kind of like play into that. What can you comment on that could help these people potentially?
Right.
And then you'll kind of pull them into kind of your niche. I kind of wanted to ask you that about Lifestyle Redesigned really quick. Like, what is your like target audience? Like, who is your goal? Like, who do you want to kind of help what you're doing?
I would say that my audience would be multi-passionate people in general. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could be working the corporate life. Like, you don't have to align with any other value besides being passionate about more than one thing. And I think that it targets a lot of people, almost everybody, but it actually like defines that group of people. You know, I've always heard like, don't create a product that markets to everybody. You know what I mean? That's why you need a niche. Like, that's why you need an audience. That's why you need to be targeting people and things like that. But I think that multi-passionate people, when they're defined as that, they are like easily inspired by things, and they want to be motivated, and they want to take that next step because they've defined themselves as like, okay, I like this, but I also like this. I'm passionate about this, but I want to try this, you know? And at first I didn't even know what to call myself because I liked so many things. I was like, okay, well, I like to travel, but I also like to do this stuff. You know what I mean? I like to speak. I like to go out. I like to like everything was, I was like, so which direction should I go in? And I think that for Lifestyle Redesigned, I really want it to be a place where people can actually share that and find people that relate to them. Because also when I was going through college and even just recently graduating, I was like, okay, well, I like so many things. How do I know which is the right way to go? Or how do I even know where to go next or what step to take? And I think that through Lifestyle Redesigned, people will be able to read about and hear about and listen to so many different stories that could possibly relate to them or could be almost exactly what they're going through. And just like be inspired by that alone and just being like, okay, there's other people out there that like the same stuff as me, or that quit their job, or that did this or that did that. So why can't I? You know, I think that that's like the main question that I want people to be asking after finding Lifestyle Redesigned, after listening to an episode, after reading a blog, after a mentoring session, after anything, after hearing me speak, like any of these interviews, things like that, is like, well, why can't I do it? You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing stopping. I should say there's so many things that are stopping us from doing it, but people do it anyways. And I think that that's really important to remember, that like, okay, it's the same thing going back with like the opportunities and obstacles. You know, if you see something as an obstacle, you're never going to like get through it as quickly as if you saw it as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
Super dope. Yeah. No, I liked what you went into there. I think just the whole, it's carrying a good theme, you know, with Lifestyle Redesigned, and just like people that they'll see the product, they see kind of how you're living, and a big thing on content, as you know, is relatability. So like creating that, right, if they can do it, why can't I? And now Lifestyle Redesigned brings kind of, in a way, like a structured system to that. Like, oh, are you interested in kind of living this lifestyle? Do you want to connect with other people that are also, you know, thinking along those lines? Well, you know, here's how I did it, and here's how I'm teaching others. You know, hopefully you could take something from our program and like, you know, add that balance. Because you're right. I think when you're people don't think it's possible to live like a nomadic lifestyle or to make money from home, as we were talking about earlier. Like, oh my God, like
so easy.
The opportunities right now to do it, you're just, the only people who aren't doing it are the ones that haven't tried. It's just, and yeah, just like, I think that'll be a good pull, because you'll provide the structure and kind of the balance and answer a lot of the questions that I'm sure you had. Like before.
Exactly.
Yeah. And let's talk
I was just going to say that is like the people that I think about that I'm targeting are almost like my younger selves. I'm only 22, but I'm talking about like my 20-year-old self, even 2 years ago, would never have imagined as to how much happened in 2 years. You know what I mean? Granted, COVID, but like there was a change, there was like a shift in my mindset after reading, after listening to podcasts, after surrounding myself with people who I was inspired by, who I was motivated by. And it's like all of those like little changes truly got me to where I am today. And that's where I want lifestyle to come in and to come into play when it comes to my audience, is for them to see like, okay, if these little changes changed your life so dramatically in 2 years, then like I'm inspired to do the same.
Yeah. And just to put it in perspective, I like how you really framed it, like just you 2 years ago.
Right.
Like, listen to that, kind of hear what we're talking about, and you just said it, like you hit on again, like how much has happened. Like you put it in perspective how much experience you can gain in such a short period amount of time. And it all starts with like you said, taking the first step, but then consistently taking the next step. And, you know, I want to get into the travel side to it, because and you could correct me if I'm wrong. Would you say that it took traveling and this interest in solo travel to really get like your business side of it rolling, or to spark that side to it? Or have you always kind of had the business mind, you just weren't sure where you wanted to go with it?
I think the solo travel brought confidence. I think that it allowed me to actually enjoy my own company. It allowed me to, I don't want to say reflect, because it's like so cliche in the solo travel industry of people being like, once you solo travel, you'll reflect on yourself and you'll change your life and da-da-da-da-da. But when I tell you that that is the one cliche that I can like totally attest to and totally be like, that is the stuff that happens. Like genuinely, when you do something by yourself, you have all that time alone at the airport. You don't think about that when you're with friends of like the 2-hour layover, because you guys are going to get food, you're going to the bathroom, you're hanging out at the gate and walking around and talking and whatever. But when you're by yourself, 2 hours is a long time at the airport. And you realize like, okay, I have also, after the layover, you got to get on a flight by yourself, and then once you get on the flight by yourself, you got to travel by yourself until you meet people. But you are like with yourself for a lot of the time, especially when you first solo travel. You kind of realize like, oh my God, I haven't spent this much time by myself in like forever, ever, So I think that it definitely brought confidence in myself to be like, I'm the only one that can do this. You know what I mean? If somebody's going to do it, it's going to be me. It's going to have to be me. The reason why I started solo traveling in general is because I didn't want to wait on anybody else. And I think that that was incorporated into the business of like not wanting to wait on anybody else to tell me, okay, you're good to go. Okay, we can do this. Okay, you have enough money to do this. Okay, this, okay, that, you know? It was like, this is now in my hands. And I truly enjoy the process of being an entrepreneur and of the craziness of owning a business. And I think traveling and solo traveling specifically didn't necessarily spark the business itself, but it sparked the confidence that I didn't have before to actually do something on my own and for myself.
Oh yeah. No, that's awesome, because you think about, like you hit on how much we're ingrained since we start school to always have people around us, and necessary people, like necessary relationships and necessary growth you should go to. But because it's 18 years consecutively in a row, it's hard to think, oh, like stepping outside of that is normal. And it's not that it's not normal, it's that it's a big change, because you take the first 18 years usually, and you know, maybe 4 more going into college and constantly being around that scene. Like, you could be 18 to 22 years old where you're never alone necessarily for more than a couple hours a day. Like, if I want to have a week here, you know, down in South Florida where all my buddies are still in school, and like see them every day at some point, I can. But imagine a world where, like you said, you go solo, like, and I'm getting ready to do this, I'm excited, but when I go solo travel, like, what's it going to be like to go 1-2 weeks, but not just going home and seeing your family, like just you. Like, I take 15 minutes a day and I do my meditation and stuff. Where people can relate, but how many people have just gone and just like nobody around? Who knows what could happen? Where was the first place you solo traveled? And can you kind of tell me about that experience?
Sure. So if you get super technical, for me, solo travel was always doing something completely by myself. So I was the one that planned it. I was the one that figured out, okay, this hotel I'm staying at, and then I'm going to drive 6 hours and stay at this hotel. I'm going to do all of this in between the time, and then I'm going to fly out of here, da-da-da. That was like my definition of solo travel. However, a lot of people's definition is just not going with their friends. So that's group trips. That's meeting up with somebody on the way, you know, that's things like that. So 2 answers to that. My first trip where I just went by myself, I didn't know anybody, was a group trip actually through Nova. I went to Guatemala, and that was amazing. And that kind of sparked my love for travel and experiencing new cultures. However, my first like real solo trip that I like to say was when I road tripped through like the West Coast, I should say. I flew into Phoenix. I did a round trip to Phoenix, but I rented a car for 10 days, and I just drove like from Phoenix. I went to Utah. I went to Nevada. I went to California, Colorado. I know I'm kind of out of order. New Mexico, and then back to Phoenix, and I flew back out. And that was very easy to plan because I just like created a circle for myself. But it was like the most amazing, also the most terrifying thing that I've ever done. And that truly made me realize that like, okay, I can do this on my own. I did it. I slept in freaking hostels, motels, hotels by myself. You know, I was scared out of my mind going. I really do recommend, if you're going to do something like that, like to have a car, because it was almost like a safety for me. So when for example, when I went to Sedona, I wanted to hike to this place called Devil's Bridge, and I did, but I went by myself, and I've never hiked by myself before. So in my head, all I was thinking was like, worst case scenario, because that's where my mind goes. Worst case scenario, I will run back, get into my car and leave. You know what I mean? So when you're doing like Europe or Central America or things like that, I think it's a lot easier because of public transportation. But if you're planning on doing something, especially in the US, where if you're not in a major city, public transportation is just not there, I would definitely recommend a car. But yeah, my road trip on the West Coast was my first solo trip, and it was amazing. It again allowed me to be by myself, allowed me to be scared. I think that's the other thing is like whenever I felt fear before, I always went to somebody else. There was nobody else to go to. You know, of course, I could call my mom, call my boyfriend, whatever, but there was nobody else that was coming. And I think that that got me through a lot of things that had happened throughout the trip that I probably wouldn't have fully experienced if I was with other people. An example of that is I was in Joshua Tree Park, and in every national park, there is no service. So you have to download like a map of when you get in and when you get out, like Google Maps, whatever, you can download it. And same thing in Zion National Park. But specifically Joshua Tree, I went there and I pulled over on the side of the road and I was taking pictures and things like that, taking videos, kept driving, pulled over, took pictures, experienced everything. And I realized halfway through the park that I didn't download the map. So I had no idea how to get out of the park because Joshua Tree, there's like multiple exits. Within those multiple exits, you could either be going through California South or through California North. So I drove like 2.5 hours north in California and was running out of gas, still had no service. I was like in the park, no service, no gas, or like running out of gas. Didn't know what direction I was going in. There was nobody around. So that moment, I was like, what do I do? Like genuinely, what do I do? And I think that that made me realize when you are solo traveling, like take everything with a grain of salt. At the end of the day, it was a great experience and I got to see more of Joshua Tree than I would have if I went the other way. But I was stressed out in that moment. But then once it was figured out and I started driving back like through Palm Springs and just south to where I was supposed to be going, I was like, okay, I made it out. You know what I mean? It happened. It's okay. Like there's no reason to stress over it, but it happened. It's an experience. And like, that's the stuff that you deal with when you're solo traveling that you just kind of have to like brush off. Like if I stressed about it for the rest of the trip of like, what would have happened if this, what would have happened if this, I think that it would have made the trip a lot less enjoyable as opposed to like taking things that might happen to you that you didn't expect and being like, okay, it's part of the experience, you know, keep on going.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's like, I like how you kind of ended it and pointed out like the metaphor that it carries in kind of everything you do. So like,
yeah,
just like your daily life, like that, it's going to happen. You got to just life carries on. Now, as I'm sure everyone's now wondering, how did you get out of that experience? Yeah. And yeah, like what?
Yeah. How did it end, basically?
Yeah, like, how are you sitting here today? Because frankly, all I have left is you went 2.5 hours in the wrong direction, almost ran out of gas, and then we're back. So
here we are, right? Yeah. So I just kept driving. So obviously all of the national parks end at some point. So that was what was keeping me going. There's also no signs. So I just had a road in front of me. Like that's all I had. I had a road in front of me, like a quarter of a tank of gas, and just my mind being like praying to God, you know, get me out of here. So I just kept driving. I was like, worst case scenario. And this is what is another thing to prepare for when you're solo traveling is like money. If I had to stay in a $300 hotel, if that was the only hotel in the area and I had to stay there because I couldn't drive any longer, I ran out of gas, whatever it was, I was able to do that because I had prepared for situations like that. You know, I'm not saying go into your solo trips thinking about what's the worst case that could happen. What if this happens to me? What if this? What if this? But definitely have some sort of cushion to have shit hit the fan because most likely things will not go exactly as you planned. But I didn't have to stay in a $300 hotel, thank God. I drove out and Joshua Tree probably knows that so many people run out of gas, so there's a gas station right outside of the park. I was like, thank the Lord. So I pull up into the gas station. And, you know, of course, I'm like crying. I'm like, finally, I have service. Let me call my mom, tell her what happened, blah, blah, blah. So then I had to like drive a little further to like fully get service because I had like one bar so I could, you know, use my phone, but not necessarily make like full on calls that would actually go through. So I had to keep driving a little further after I filled my tank and looked up directions. And that's when I started crying even more because I realized I was like I drove 2.5 hours away from where I started, which was like 3.5 hours away from where I was supposed to be, which was where my hotel was. So moral of the story was I just kept driving, and that's the other point of like having a car. If I was walking, or if I was like, you know, whatever, and I had no service and I just like didn't know where I was or whatever, totally different case scenario. But yeah, the gas station saved my life. Drove up a little further, called my mom just to tell her what happened, looked up directions, and I was like, okay, 3.5 hours, put on 3 podcasts, you know, listen to an album, 2 albums, 3 albums, and you'll be good. And so, yeah, that's how I made it. Slept in the hotel that night. And yeah, just woke up the next day and was like, wow, that really happened. And then, you know, kept going.
Yeah. Now let's turn it a little more positive. What's been your favorite, like most recent travel trip?
Okay. So I would say a month ago now was Hawaii, and that was an experience that was different than anything else that I have done because, okay, this is going to sound dramatic, but for me, I feel like every time I solo travel, this is going to sound so dramatic, but I almost like unlock a new like version of myself or like a new personality. And when I've heard that before, like even just watching videos or like listening to podcasts of like, you don't even realize how many versions of yourself you actually have until you go through these experiences. And so when I was doing like the first solo trip, that was more like naturey, that was very like hiking oriented and just like being really like engulfed in nature and seeing all of these like beautiful national parks and, you know, all of these, like just like being truly alone, I guess, and like enjoying nature. Whereas Hawaii was like completely different, like island girl to the max. I stayed in Maui and I went to Oahu. I stayed like in the touristy area, in like Waikiki Beach. And then Maui, I stayed in like the east side of Maui. So I stayed in a hostel over there as well. And yeah, that was just like, it was almost like a soulful experience because every day I was like eating fresh fruit. I was swimming in the most beautiful ocean surrounded by volcanoes. Like I truly felt like I had never like unlocked that side of myself before because I never had an experience like that. I never had an experience of like being surrounded by volcanoes, being surrounded by, you know, huge waves and a bunch of strangers. Like we had a realization when I was at the beach with a bunch of people that I stayed with in the hostel. We were like, we don't even know each other's last names. We know your first name and where you're from, you know, and that's obviously you have to be careful with people and stuff like that. But like, it was a very good group of people. They were all like 20 to 25. And we were like, holy shit, we know nothing about each other. We just went surfing. We just watched the sunset. Now we're walking back to the hostel, going to get ice cream, whatever it is. And we don't really know each other like that. But it was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've ever had, including experiences with people that I've known for like 10, 15 years, my whole life. Like, I think that this experience, specifically going to Hawaii, is A, something that everybody should do and should experience, but B, is just like realizing that there's so many different experiences that you can have, and figuring yourself out within those experiences is like a very important way of growing, honestly.
Yeah, no, super cool. I really like, it's so interesting how you said like you guys didn't even know each other's last names. Like it was just kind of, but it shows how like natural it was, and how, again, you can't just get that when you're consistently like in this, I don't know, hamster wheel of like, this is what you got to do every day. It's okay to like
auto mode
mix it up. And I know you can find the whole itinerary on your Instagram, so we won't get into that side of it. But I have seen that you've done like a few partnered experiences. So like pages We Live to Explore. I saw Getaway House, a brand called Create and Cultivate. Kind of what goes into making those happen, and kind of take us through that experiences for the other travel influencers out there, or those that are thinking about maybe, I do kind of live this lifestyle and want to get involved with that.
Right. So to preface all of this, I have around 2,000 followers on Instagram and 2,500 to 2,800 on TikTok.
Yes.
So
thank you for doing that.
Whenever people are like, oh, how did you become an influencer? I'm like, an influencer? Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And this realization came when I was in Chicago, actually, which was actually a year ago now, was when we moved out there, and now I'm home. But when my boyfriend and I had moved out to Chicago, I was still figuring out content creation and where I wanted to take my Instagram, where I wanted to take my podcast, and honestly, how other people were doing these brand deals, how other people were working with companies and things like that. And it all started when somebody had actually reached out to me from my TikTok, and they were like, oh, I see that you post different food places in the destinations that you travel to. And I was literally just doing that because I like taking videos and I like posting them. You know, none of those were like brand deals in like 2020, 2021. None of those were like paid or anything. It was just, I like this restaurant, I'm going to post about it. And so he messaged me saying, hey, do you want to come in? If you post on your TikTok and your Instagram, we can give you like free brunch, something like that. And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. I was like so excited. You know, that was like the first time that somebody actually like had reached out to me. And we went there and it was bottomless brunch. So it was, we got in, they knew who I was already. I swear, like this was the most famous I've ever felt. They knew who I was already. They had our table set up for us. It was just me and my boyfriend. And on the table was 2 bottles of champagne, a bunch of different like juices that we could pick from, champagne glasses, and then like menus specified to us. And of course, this specific company wanted me to show off the experience that people would get when they go into the restaurant. So that's where like the hack is when you start working with brands, they will give you the best experience because that's what they want, you know, your audience to see. So I had posted the TikTok and things like that. And I was like, you know what, let me reach out to the person who reached out to me and thank him for the opportunity and ask him, oh, I know that you're in this hospitality group. Are any other restaurants in the group? Do any of them need marketing materials? Do any of them need like content? And he was like, absolutely. I can set you up with every restaurant in our hospitality industry. So when I tell you every weekend was a free brunch, a free dinner, free food, like when I tell you it was like the most insane thing that had happened to me. But that was because I had sent a follow-up message. You know, I had sent something that said, hey, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you need? I can provide that for you. And that sparked my personal outreach and like I don't want to say shame, but I always felt like, oh, I'm not big enough to reach out to people. So after that, and after he said yes, I was like, what's the worst thing they're going to say? No. So then I started reaching out to Getaway House, for example. I saw somebody else post about their like brand partnership with them. I went on the website, found like the talent acquisition or sales team email, and I sent them my, you know, not necessarily scripted, but personalized to them, my little template that I have that was personalized to Getaway House. And I said something to the effect of like, I would love to come and experience like what Getaway House has to offer in exchange for content, you know. And she said, absolutely. Here's a 2-night stay in our nicest cabin. Post a TikTok, post an Instagram, and you're good. And again, you know, it happened again. And it was because I just said, listen, like I noticed that other people were doing this for you. I can also do this for you. And what I learned recently was that my 2,000 followers, that might not seem like a lot to influencers or people who have more followers, that is 2,000 more people than Getaway House. That is 2,000 more eyes than Getaway House had on them before. Same thing with the restaurant. Same thing with Create and Cultivate. We Live to Explore. All of these accounts, it's like my audience was new people that could potentially book with these brands. And that was kind of my like I want to say was like, listen, I have a very engaged audience. You know, people come to me and ask me for advice when they're visiting places or doing things. And that's what I told them. I was just like, listen, if you want more people to book, I can help you do that. I can post for you. I can do this. And it was a yes. It was an automatic yes. So Chicago really sparked it because I was getting so many yeses. When I came back home, all of those yeses changed. And that's because being from a small town, being a content creator does not matter. They don't even know what that is, you know? So trying to get brand deals, trying to get hotel deals, just like restaurants and stuff like that. They're like, what do you mean you're going to post on Instagram? What is TikTok? Like, what do you mean 2,000 followers? What, blah, blah, blah. So I definitely think a good place to start would be where social media and influencers in general is definitely more well known. So yeah, places like Miami, New York, Chicago, like definitely the bigger cities. But also you can, I don't want to say twist it, but just tell them like, this is free marketing. Everybody knows what marketing is. They might not know what influencers are. They might not know what social media is, but they know what marketing is. Every company has to market to some extent. So for example, for New Hampshire, if you wanted to go and snowmobile or ski or stay in a lodge, call them up, say, hi, I've pretended to be my own assistant before. So I would be like, hi, I'm calling on behalf of one of my clients. She's coming to visit in the next couple weeks. If you need any marketing material, she'll be staying with you guys. Is there any way that you can exchange her content for a hosted stay? Something like that. Some of them will be like, we'll get back to you. Of course, come on in. We'll completely comp everything. We'll give you food credit. It really depends on the place, but I would say those are my like little secrets to getting brand deals and stuff like that is don't be ashamed to reach out because you're not going backwards when you're reaching out. The worst thing they're going to say is no, and then you're back to where you started. You know, there is no going backwards. So yeah, those are like my top little secrets for like how I've gotten brand deals to this point, especially as a smaller creator. I think that really anybody can do it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love how you started that because I talk about this all the time. Is like you don't need a big following to like make certain things happen, and like people think it's like, oh, it'll take so long to get to 10,000 followers, and then I'll start making money off my Instagram.
Right.
Then I'll like I say to people all the time, like I have 49 subscribers on YouTube, and I probably have 3 clients that came from the link in my YouTube description.
Yep.
Because when you look at, and I want to make this point too, like, yes, you have 2,000 followers, but when you make a reel, it's not limited to just your followers. So it's like 10,000 views on a reel. It's better than all of your followers looking at that. If none of your followers looked at it, but 10,000 other people saw it, do you really care? Like it's
right.
Still your name, your brand, your product, you know, put in front. And the hotels, when you can make that realization to them, because like you said, many have been owned many years and they don't necessarily have people making decisions that are in this space. It just comes down to, like you said, like know your audience, like know where you're going into, know your customer. It's like simple marketing things. Phrase it to a bigger name CEO as marketing and frame it to a 28-year-old hotel manager as you're a TikToker and like you're making all this and look what you've done for other people.
Exactly.
Now, are most of these experiences, like you said, I like how you said you just reach out and do the videos. Do you recommend like starting with like a free demo typically of what you can do before requesting these? Or are they on an exchange basis from the get-go?
Yeah, so for me, influencing and content creation isn't necessarily, well, I don't make money from that, but that's not really where I see my income coming from in general. I don't want content creation to become a job for me because I actually enjoy it. And I found that like when you make all of your passions into a job, it almost like lowers it in a sense of enjoyability because you have to do it. You know what I mean? So every experience that I've done, every brand collaboration has been exchanges. And I know a lot of influencers in the space are very against that because there is so much work that actually goes into content creation in general. For me, I offer a very like minimal media package. So it's not necessarily too much work. And I also enjoy it. But yeah, all of my experiences have just been exchanges, and that is good enough for me. You know, something for free is fine for me. I have other sources of income. I have other streams of income. And if I'm already doing something anyways, if I'm already going out to eat or if I'm already staying somewhere, then it doesn't hurt to ask for a free night. You know what I mean? Most hotels that I reach out to, this is another little tip, are not ones that will be booked out. So essentially I'm staying in a room that wasn't going to be booked anyways. that's why I say it's free marketing, because it's not like I'm taking somebody's spot. I'm just staying in a place that was going to be empty. You know what I mean? So I think that it just depends where you want to take like your content creation, like passion. If you want to take it more in the income and like making money side of things, then definitely start off building that portfolio. So doing almost everything for free, creating that TikTok account, sending it to them. In every single email, you have to have a link to all of that stuff. You do not want them to do any work. You want it to be minimal as possible. Send them the links, send previous brand collaborations, pretend that you worked with a brand. Literally go to a restaurant, pay for it, and then send a new company that you want to work for a TikTok that you created for this restaurant for completely free, whatever it is. And they will be like, wow, your content for that restaurant was really good. I want you to do that for me. So yeah, it just depends on like where you want to take it. If you think that like free experiences and just exchanges are good for you, then great. If you really want it to become your main source of income, then definitely like start building a portfolio and kind of work your way up and realize your value. And then at that point you can kind of, you know, like negotiate with the brand of how much you would get paid for each collaboration.
Oh, very nice and very cool. Like I work with another brand that does a very similar thing in Boston, and he's now to the point where he's built a following of like over 100,000 across multiple platforms, and he feels like he's in a position to, okay, like we'll still kind of do the experiences, but if they want to do it with us on a monthly basis, now we've inserted an offer that's like,
for sure,
again, breaks down. So the potential's certainly there, but I like how you've kind of like, but it's totally okay to do exactly what I'm doing now, because who knows what these relationships are going to build? You know, like who knows when the hotel owner is going to hit you up 5 years from now and be like, are you still making content? Like we now look where content's taken us. Like your value's only gone up, and I want to give you this because you've done it this way, to where it'll kind of come to you. Like I'm sure you're going to be in a place very soon, especially as you pursue these other ventures, that gets your name out there around more people that know exactly what you're doing and see kind of your product, where people probably start asking you to do it. Hey, can I pay you the X amount of money to do this? Or can I give you this experience? Like they'll start to come to you when you give the value you want to get back, right? Like it's like a traditional thing we talk about all the time, like give out what you want to get back. And it's a great way to do that. What are some other ways people can make money as travel influencers / digital nomads today?
Yeah, I think brand collaborations is definitely a big market. Also, being a digital nomad, I work in the social media space for my clients. So I also know how much budget they have, and there is an insane amount of budget for influencer marketing. So if you really want to like dive into becoming an influencer or just content creation, UGC, whatever it is, companies have the budget to pay you to make content. Like I cannot stress that enough. So that is definitely a big source of income for a lot of influencers or just a lot of people in general. In terms of actually traveling and making money, it's hard to say because my business and my travel are almost separated. They're pretty closely related, but they are separated. So I make money through my clients, through having my own business, through promoting the podcast, having ads and things like that. And then I travel along with it. And that's where the brand collaborations come in. That's where the impact comes in. That's where the inspiration comes in. And then that's where like the mentoring calls come in. So it's almost like a full circle effect. You know what I mean? So I started this business where I'm working with clients, and then I'll travel while I'm working. I'll post about it, and then people will be like, oh, I want you to mentor me on how to do that. And now it's back to the business.
Cool.
You know what I mean? So for me, my sources of income have just become like a full circle effect of posting content as well as having my own business, because the content does lead to clients. Yeah,
no, 100%. I like how you kind of showcase how that happens. I feel that on the same aspect, kind of what we're doing, like with the podcast and then also having the agency. It's just like, it's like we talk about, like it's time, it's attention, and it's, you know, as the message lines up, it's very similar kind of what you're portraying. I see your business as a very like expression of like, you know, your personality and what you like, the impact you want to have. Like it's very kind of, people underestimate like the art side to really building your own brand and building your own business, because a lot of like the decisions you make as a business owner, and I'm sure you can relate to this, are kind of geared towards who you are and like the experiences you've had. So like,
For sure.
I like how you've done it, where you've kind of built this business around your passions and what you do on a consistent basis. And like, I would say like, that's the best way to do it. And in my aspect too, like I love working with brands directly and learning from business owners, and like either having a podcast or managing their social media gives me great insight into the message they're trying to portray and how the types of clients they're attracting. Like there's this whole world now where you can kind of like dive into it and like have the experience you want to have, but just use either social media as a base or use the experiences you're having by filming it and sharing it with other people as a base. Like those are options now. You can do exactly what you like to do, show other people that you're doing it, show them how to do it, provide the value. And then when you do it consistently, you just start to get the small wins. And personally, that's when I get addicted, is I'm like, I know by releasing this podcast, I'll expand myself to a greater audience. And I like the aspect of that. Hopefully one person from that had no plans to watch it, but now because I had Sam Evans on it, is going to tune in and like hear a few things I have to say. Is like super dope. And I'm sure you feel that on your aspect of it. Like people may never dive into that.
Yeah, I think something that both of us have done really well, and I give you props to this, is creating our personal brand almost first, or in combination with our like professional brand or our business. Mm-hmm. When people think of Jack Hayes, just like you said, when people think of Sam Evans, like what's the instant thing that goes to their mind? Entrepreneurship, podcasting, travel, mindset, personal growth, all of that stuff. And I think that we've both built this sense of like trust with our audience, whether it's people that we know or people that we don't know. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying earlier, you've gotten people that reach out to you. Out of the 50 people that you have from your YouTube, people reaching out to you being like, hey, I want to work with you, or hey, I love your stuff, or this and that. And it's like you showed that, and you like showed up way earlier than you started promoting yourself. And I think that's a big like mistake that people often do, is they promote immediately as opposed to like build trust and build value within their personal brand, because nobody wants to be marketed to. They want to come to you. So that's what I was getting at earlier when I was saying like, I post my content to show that I travel and to show that I know how to work and travel. And then people come to me and say, how do you do that? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's essentially like reverse psychology, or like it works backwards, where you just post what you want to post. You build that trust, you build that personal brand, and then people will come to you. Like I can promise you that. And I think you can attest to that too.
Yeah, no, 100%. You build the trust, showcase that you're in the building phase. I think I personally and I want to do a better job of showing that this year, as we've transitioned to be more like in short form content, is like showcasing the journey more, showcasing the lower points a little more. Like people want to be a part of the beginning. And like, I'm glad you said that. I appreciate that. Like, I'm sure people have seen it transition from like being in like luxury, and then like, but like you said, at least they were thinking entrepreneur, profit, this, that. Like I get people that kind of come to me and like, do you know someone that can do this? Because like the different experiences I'm able to showcase through what's all this kind of launch. So, and like you said, you've definitely dove in down that. We're almost an hour in, so we'll make this part kind of, but I think it's important. Switch gears a little bit. Your relationship, Dario, he is also an entrepreneur. God's Tier, we were talking about it a little earlier, like clothing brand, to my understanding. Can you take me through what it's like you guys have been dating over a year now, to my understanding? What it's like to, date a fellow entrepreneur, and kind of what that experience has been like, you both building your businesses and, of course, having this personal relationship at the same time?
Yeah. So we actually recorded a podcast episode on this. So a little plug there if you guys want to go listen to it.
Link to
for sure.
Podcast will definitely be in the description, but yes.
For sure. Yeah. So we kind of talked about this from both of our perspectives in that episode, but just from my perspective, that was honestly like a very attractive trait that I found, was that he also had motivation to do something that he was passionate about. He wasn't, like, again, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I didn't really want to follow the rules. I didn't really want to go by what other people were saying. I wanted to do what actually made me happy, like at the end of the day. And when we had met, his mindset was right there. Like it had like matched almost immediately of like, okay, no, he is not the biggest solo traveler and digital nomad and all of the stuff that I have found a passion for. But his own passions is something that he invests in. He knows the importance of investing in himself. He knows the importance of marketing. He knows the importance of finding inspiration and being motivated and going to conferences and listening to podcasts. And I think as we get like further and further into our relationship, I think that is something that has honestly made our relationship stronger, is not, communication or physical attraction or anything like that. It's truly that like our passions align, but not exactly in the same way. Like everything that like entrepreneurs think about, everything that multi-passionate people think about is stuff that's going through our head. It's just different topics. And I actually enjoy that better, because I think that if we were both in the same industry, we would butt heads a lot more often. So I think that we also both understand what we're going through, where we're coming from when we're having conversations. We can go out to eat and talk for hours just about his business, and then it goes into my business, and then it goes into other stuff, and then we laugh through it. You know what I mean? We have serious conversations. We understand each other's stress when we're stressed out and why that is and things like that. So I think that like when you do find that person that can relate to you on certain levels, I think that it's important. It's definitely important to have being in a relationship, and like the future of the relationship relies a lot more on things like that, as opposed to the like cliche things that you think about when you're wanting to like build a relationship.
Right. Yeah. And I like how it seemed like you were pretty intentional with what you were looking for. And I think that's like such a big step that people skip. Like and one of the guys I listen to, and I shout him out like every week, but Arlen talks about this, like be specific as fuck, dude. And like be intentional.
Yeah.
Like, and you said like, look for somebody that's also has like a passion there, like equally, the energy is similar in how you guys are approaching it and, going about it. So that was super cool, because like you said, you can link on that aspect of it. How do you balance, like how do you create that balance? How can someone create that balance in their relationship? Say they both are entrepreneurs, say maybe they're just dating an entrepreneur, if you can give us any insight into that.
Honestly, I think inspiring each other is like, so, whatever. I like roll my eyes when I say that, but I truly think that you need to find inspiration through the closest people that you surround yourself with. And when I say that, I mean like your friends, your family, but also like your significant other. And he absolutely inspires me to do things that I've never thought of doing before, or to just go for things. And everybody has self-doubt, no matter what their passion is, no matter how much they think that like this is exactly what they want to do, or they even start pursuing it. Like, for example, Lifestyle Redesigned, the company, I have like thought about and gone back and forth with myself about so many things. And when I like relay that to Dario, he's like, Sam, like think about how long you've wanted this for, think about who you're doing it for, think about why you're doing it, and just do it. Like at the end of the day, just do it, go for it. And that's what I preach. But when you hear it from somebody else, especially somebody that's like very important to you, it kind of like clicks in your mind as opposed to you telling it to yourself. And that just kind of goes back into what we were saying earlier about surrounding yourself with like people who will push you, people who will repeat back to you what you just said, And sometimes it gets annoying because it's like he's literally giving me my own advice. Like I've given him advice. He gives me the same advice. But hearing it from somebody else and just being inspired by that person, I think definitely like allows the relationship to be as strong as ours is personally. It can definitely be hard, especially when like your entrepreneur journeys are not necessarily in the same, like on the same path. So for example, he built his company in 2020, 2021. I'm building my company now. So I'm working all the time, every single day, trying to build this, trying to finish the website, trying to, do the recordings and shoot content and create content and all of this stuff, while he is like building the brand that he already created. So we are in like very different like spots in our entrepreneur journey. So that can definitely get difficult when it comes to like spending time together and what we're doing when we're hanging out and things like that. So there's not to say that there's not difficulties when you are in a relationship with an entrepreneur or just somebody who has the same passions as you. But I think that like the good and the like inspiration and the like the passion itself outweighs all of those challenges.
Yeah, very cool. I've heard it that it's super motivating as well. Like I said, I don't really pull from my own experience. I don't think I've ever been in a, like, I wouldn't say, I'm just not in a spot where the business is at. It'd be different if something happened like now and like within the next couple of years. But it is super cool to hear you say, like, can be motivating because you always have that person who, like, kind of regardless, they're going to, like, they believe in what you are doing, and you can validate that they've seen you low to high, right? Like
exactly.
You can validate that they're not just saying it to say it to, like, it's not like a friend you haven't seen in 3 weeks has no clue what made this happen. It's like somebody who's like, nope, I was there exactly when it happened. And like, you know, I assure you, like, you're going to get through this, and like, you know, just remind yourself. Now to kind of wrap it up, I like to go kind of deeper into the mindset a little bit. What piece of advice would you say you refer back to the most?
Okay, so it's funny that you asked this because at the end of all of my podcast episodes, I ask, like, what's the best piece of advice that you've heard, or like, what advice would you give to your younger self, and things like that. Yeah. And I've heard so many different things. But I would say one that sticks out to me is realizing the unlimited possibilities that there actually are. And I think that piece of advice, or just that like phrase in general, really, really stuck out to me and really has stuck with me throughout this journey, especially. I think that it stresses me out as much as it motivates me, but realizing that, like, if this doesn't work out, something else will. Like, there's so many, and I think that we're realizing this, especially with social media and technology in general, of like how many ways there are to actually succeed, or I don't even want to say make money, but just succeed, or like find your passion, or like live your best life, live your dream life. I think there's so many ways to do that, and that truly is something that like gets me through all of the stuff that I'm thinking about when I'm building this business. Isn't necessarily if it fails, what would I do, but it's just there's so many places, there's so many ways that this could go, and that is what inspires me to keep going, and you know, kind of keeps me in like the positive mindset of building a business, because it can get very stressful. That's 100%. Like,
yeah. Like you said, I love what you said about the infinite possibilities. At the same time, I can tell you, I've done that and like felt overwhelmed by it to an extent.
For sure.
Like, it's hard to focus down, and that's where dialing in like the small habits, like planning your day, gets super important, because it's not really but it does eliminate the matter of if. Like, I think people get stuck on if. Like, no, like, yes. Like, it's like yes, like the positive intention consistently, but detached from like what you expect it to look like, because at the end of the day, like, you're just only positive intention consistently won't be something necessarily like negative. And as you know better than anyone, whether you put in the work that day, whether you were geared towards it. Now, I guess how would you say you handle adversity?
In what sense?
I would say, actually, I kind of want to skip that question. I kind of want to wrap up with this. Where, well, actually, we have two. So, like, you always ask, like, where do people kind of see themselves in 5 years? I kind of want to know where, what are you going to be telling I got asked this on a show. Now I'm glad this came up. What do you expect you'll be telling yourself in 5 years that you wish you would have known now?
Okay.
What is
like what is my future self telling me?
Yeah. Like, what do you think in 5 years? What do you think they're gonna say? Like, what would your future yourself 5 years from now say to you right now? You think?
Oof. Probably she would say yes to every opportunity that comes your way, and don't let fear stop you. I think that especially in the travel community and entrepreneur community is don't let fear stop you, or like say yes to everything. Like, that is absolutely something that like you hear often, but I think that that's something that I would say say to myself, my future self would say to me, I should say, is because that I do let it stop me and I do say no to opportunities for whatever reason. And I think that reminding myself again that like saying yes to blank opportunity, whether that be grabbing coffee with someone I haven't talked to in a year, or going up to, for example, the manager at a restaurant and asking them if they need something like marketing wise or content wise, like things that I would be scared of normally doing, just do it, you know? And I would tell my younger self that now as well. But it still happens, you know, like I'm still out there like, no, or like, no, I'm too scared or whatever. Like it still happens. And I feel like my future self will also be in predicaments like that. I don't think that will ever change necessarily, but I think that a couple years ago to now I've grown. And I think now into like a couple years, I'll realize that like stuff is not actually as scary as it is in your head. Like if anything, everything is scarier in your head than when it's actually happening.
Very cool. Yeah, I like how that ended up. And now finally, how do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as an inspiration to one person. And I think that that is one of the most important things that I like to push when it comes to like who I am or defining myself, because that was the goal of all of this in the first place. I never wanted to make money from this, but because I enjoy it so much, I've found that that's the case, and that's where I am now. You know, I never wanted to like be invited to things or like have this like luxurious lifestyle. Like that was never the goal when starting the podcast, when starting creating content, when starting a business. But the goal was always to have an impact. You know, at first I thought it was like going on mission trips and volunteering. And yes, like that's definitely still something that I'm interested in. But now I can use my experiences and use my voice and use like the like value that I've already brought to my audience, specifically on social media. I can use that to inspire somebody to just go and do something. And my friend actually said this to me a couple weeks ago. We hadn't talked in maybe a couple months. And he said, we were just talking about whatever brand stuff. And he said, Sam, you're the only person that I know that says something and then actually does it. You know, there's so many people that are like, oh, I'm going to do this or oh, I'm going to do this. And it just like, it's like in one ear, out the other, or like, it's a very like short thought. And that like was something that I was so proud of hearing, that I've like gotten to the point where people think of me as like, I say I'm going to Hawaii, I'm going to go like within the next 2 months, 3 months, you know, I say I'm going to go to Europe, I'm going to go to Europe in the next like year, you know what I mean? So I think that having that impact and like being inspiring to others, but also like staying true to myself and being as authentic as possible is absolutely how I want to be remembered by and how I want people to see me.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
And where can we find you?
Where can you find me? Okay, so on all platforms, so TikTok and Instagram, it's Sam Evans Travel, Lifestyle Redesigned Podcast on all platforms, and then lifestyle-redesigned.com will be the new Lifestyle Redesigned company where you can find all the resources that you need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam. That was awesome.
Of course. Thanks for having me.